North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the broadcast. It's good to have you here. What do? We report the news honestly and fairly. We point out, we analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That is not the news. Simply my opinion, just as valuable as yours, and so we debate. And you can do that two ways. You can call me 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can also find us on this wonderful chat room we have at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're watching on Rumble, if you're watching on Patreon, thank you. Thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast. This was recorded earlier today. We start at 3 p.m. Central Time. Normally, we start at 2 p.m. Because I was very sure that we were not going to be in the situation that we're in. I went ahead and kept some doctor's appointments today, and there was no way for me to go back on the air at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I decided that what I would do is leave it until 3 p.m., and that is where we are. What is going on? Well, Kevin McCarthy has lost 2 more votes today. He is not the Speaker of the House yet. He will not be the Speaker of the House after this 9th vote. In fact, they're expecting a 10th vote possible today. I was, and said so on this broadcast yesterday, very sure indeed, that Kevin McCarthy would do the deals necessary to become Speaker of the House of Representatives last night. From what I understand, there was progress made. Was there enough progress to get the Freedom Caucus, the members of the Freedom Caucus, to relent? No. And so here we are again today. And let me show you the vote tally so far. As you can see, Kevin McCarthy has 84 votes. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat, he's the Democrat leader of the House of Representatives. He has 82 votes. Donalds, who we met yesterday, Byron Donalds, is a guy who is collecting 8 votes now. There is a new person on the block. That is Kevin Hern of Oklahoma. He is there. Other people have been voting otherwise, but the vote totals remain about the same. Kevin McCarthy, in both vote totals today, has garnered 201 votes and will very likely garner 201 votes again. Hakeem Jeffries has led all of these votes with 212. And so that's where we stand at this particular moment. The roll call is being called, and I have some commentary that I simply must make. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. And I want you to understand that the purpose of this broadcast is news. It is not commentary, but there is commentary that must be had. And you have your part of it, and I have my part of it. Please do share your part of it, as I will share with you. As we come to this, there have been many very unfortunate statements made about the people who have taken part in holding up Kevin McCarthy's ascent to the Speaker of the House. And those are perfectly fine and legitimate. Those are perfectly fine and legitimate opinions. I have no problem with that. But there are a few things that need to be pointed out. Thing number 1, someone said earlier today that if you want to change the way things are done in Washington, you have to change the leadership. There is no better time to do that. Nancy Pelosi is stepping away from the speakership. She is not going to be the Democrat leader. She has stepped away, for all intents and purposes, from political power in the United States. The time to change the Republican leadership is very, very opportune at this particular moment. It's now. That's thing number 1. Thing number 2, Kevin McCarthy knows full well what he must do to become Speaker of the House. He has to reach out to the members of the Freedom Caucus voting against him and mollify them. In other words, acquiesce to their demands. There have been some very bad things said. The reason that we're here is because the people of the Freedom Caucus opposing Kevin McCarthy assert that there is a Washington, D.C. power cartel. That person is correct. There is a power cartel. The two parties work together to the benefit of the parties, less the people of the United States. That's why there are so many people getting traction with something called America First, where the government of the United States works to the benefit of the people of the United States as opposed to the benefit of themselves, the town, the parties. That is most assuredly what we have now. We have that very power arrangement in place. If you want to break down that power, you have to break down the leadership. The other thing that has been said is that these people, these Freedom Caucus members, they want speakerships, or excuse me, they want chairmanships in some of the committees. And the person that was explaining why that would never happen said some very unfortunate things as follows. Those chairmanships are given out on merit. They're given out on merit. Well, who assigns the merit necessary to become a committee chairman? The very same players in the Washington, D.C. political cartel that have been referred to, in this, or that have been referred to in this very conversation. In other words, the people with power seek to consolidate and keep it by taking care of their buddies with, quote, merit, unquote. Now, I understand why that is. I'm not blind and I'm not silly. I understand why that is, because you've got to prove that you have staying power to be a chairman in a House committee. That being said, what the merit system does is maintain the status quo ante. That is what these people are working to break down. There is room for them to negotiate on both sides. And that has essentially happened a little bit last night, but should happen a lot more today. I would suggest that after this vote, someone again will indeed say, "Hey, let's have another huddle and let's figure this out." At some point, someone will acquiesce. I suggest it should be Kevin McCarthy. I do. Anhoy Guzman says that the members of the caucus that are opposing Kevin McCarthy can't agree on a candidate. Well, yes, they can, but they don't need to. The candidate they need to agree on is Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy is the prime mover in this. Kevin McCarthy could do anything that he wanted to do to make this happen at any time he wanted to make this happen. All he has to do is go into a room with them and say, "Yes, I expect your vote. I'll give you everything. I expect your vote." There is something that is very interesting. A couple of the demands made by the members of the Freedom Caucus involve things that were, for time immemorial, part of the House rules. Those House rules were changed by Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, the most powerful speaker in the history of the United States of America, changed things thanks to a Democrat majority in the House of Representatives to consolidate power in the Speaker's office. Kevin McCarthy seeks to keep that power for himself, or at least some of it. That is not the way it's supposed to be. Other people say, well, the demands would, say, for example, put the speakership in a straitjacket. In other words, the speaker would be beholden to, say, for example, one person asking for a motion to vacate the chair. In other words, remove the Speaker of the House. That's the way it has been in the House of Representatives for hundreds of years before Nancy Pelosi took over. That is a long, well-worn rule. And they say that the entire speakership would be up for grabs because of that. No, one person could request a motion to vacate the chair. What would then happen? Would the chair be vacated based on one congressman saying, "I don't like this guy"? The answer is no. There would be a full vote of the House of Representatives. And that's being left out of all of these discussions. And I want to know why. In other words, one person can't remove the House Speaker. Well, those aren't the political talking points being used by supporters of Kevin McCarthy. Why not? Well, because they want to try to make these Freedom Caucus members look as silly as possible. It's not going to work. You can't threaten them out of this. You can't ridicule them out of this because there are millions, tens of millions of Americans at least who believe in exactly what these people are doing. As far as I'm concerned, in my own particular way of seeing things, I believe there is huge merit in what these members of the Freedom Caucus are demanding. I believe there's huge merit in it. I also believe that Kevin McCarthy, if he wants to lead, and if he indeed wants to lead as Speaker of the House, has to do the things necessary to get the job. People say, well, this would again put the speakership in a straitjacket. The Constitution of the United States puts the federal government in a straitjacket. As we have seen, when the government of the United States strays away from the Constitution, horrible, terrible, awful things happen. Like, for example, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the Secret Service, the IRS, the Office of National Intelligence. All of these people exert power against arguably the biggest media in the history of media in the United States, social media, to curtail, indeed quash, the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. And they're doing so for political reasons. That is a problem. And that occurred before any of this so-called chaos occurred. People say that when we open this stuff up, at what, the world is safer? Somebody anoints themselves as the author of all things misinformation and not, and can send off to Elba or send into exile anybody who disagrees. That's not the United States of America. That is not. People say, my goodness gracious, this is holding up the business of the House of Representatives. Let it hold up the business of the House of Representatives. Because the lesson that needs to be learned here is not that these renegade 20 or what have you are holding up the works. The lesson is that if you want to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives, you have to know how to lead. And with every day that goes by where Kevin McCarthy does not make that happen, he looks less and less and less like a leader, and more and more and more like someone who wants to maintain the status quo ante. There is one other thing that is going on that I spoke about yesterday that not only infuriates me, but I believe would infuriate everyone in the United States. At least people who believe that the government of the United States should work for the benefit of the people of the United States. And that is a functioning Republican Party that is adversarial to the political whims of the Democrat Party. And we don't have that. The Republican Party, as it now stands, enables the Democrat Party. That's what they do. That's their mission. They love wallowing in defeat, where they don't have to make leadership decisions, where they don't have to do the things necessary to be able to lead a great nation. The Republican Party has come to that. And if you don't believe me, look at the Republicans in the Senate. They are the shining examples of what I just said. No, you may not agree with this group, this Freedom Caucus group, but believe me, they're doing American work. We should let them. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment.
Bolton.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. The chat room is open and says Speaker McCarthy or would-be Speaker McCarthy has already given in more than the 20 against him from the Freedom Caucus, than the voters asked for. This is bullcorn. One of the interesting things about that is, and that's a perfectly valid, that's a valid opinion, and I'm not arguing with you or disagreeing with you even. But the simple case of the matter is that the enemy gets a vote. That's one of the hardest things for people to understand. You can come up with the world's greatest plan, but the people that oppose that plan, they get a vote. And we're seeing that right here, right now. In fact, the ninth vote for Speaker of the House is going on. Kevin McCarthy has already lost it, from a standpoint of being able to achieve a majority. Let's see. Ann says they just want power. Well, is it that they want power, or do they want to remove power from the ruling class? At this particular moment, I believe that the latter is more true than the former, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. The art of compromise seems to be lost. Well, once again, somebody said something about, you don't want to, if you want to drain the swamp, you don't want to put the largest crocodile in the swamp in charge. Well, that doesn't seem a very compromisable position, although I urge Kevin McCarthy to acquiesce to all the demands of these people in the Freedom Caucus. And they say, my goodness gracious, John David, we can't do that. That's a slippery slope. A slippery slope, huh? Well, let me talk a little bit about the slippery slope. The people that have always rubber stamped the speaker, the people that are Republicans that have come to Capitol Hill, even when they were leading the parade, when they were in power, they have slippery sloped us into $32 trillion worth of national debt. I'm not exactly sure that we need any more of this non-slippery slope. The slippery slope that these people seem to be setting up, I'm talking about the 20 that are in the Freedom Caucus, the slippery slope that they seem to be constructing is a slippery slope right back to the Constitution of the United States and a country that lives within its means and has people in power that understand the humility required to be in power. Do you believe that Kevin McCarthy has that level of humility? With every day that goes by, those beliefs have to be being frayed. I would say that they have gone a large direction that way. The slippery slope that these people are trying to do, the check and balance on that is reasonableness. If they are unreasonable, then by all means, they should be set aside. But if they're not unreasonable, if they are reasonable indeed, and their demands that I've heard, they seem to be perfectly reasonable to me. But what they do is they return the House of Representatives to the House of Representatives as opposed to the House that Nancy Pelosi built. And if that is the case, and I believe it to be true, then Kevin McCarthy is standing in the way of that. Should he be the Speaker of a House of Representatives that becomes a fiefdom instead of a public calling? That gets back to that humility. So when we start talking about the so-called egos of these people, which egos are we talking about? Kevin McCarthy believes he deserves this job. He believes he's earned this job. Well, okay, I'm sure you've done great work, raised a lot of money, gotten a lot of candidates elected. I'm sure you have. But that job does not come with simple, boisterous belief that you have earned it. It comes because the people around you believe you should have it. That means 218 of them. So far, 218 don't agree that that should be the case. This is America in action. This is a fight for change. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. And more of your comments on the chat room in just a second. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Vote number 9 is unfolding as we speak. Kevin McCarthy will get 201 votes. Hakeem Jeffries will get 212 votes. Byron Donalds will get 17 votes or 18, depending on how things shake out. And Kevin Hearn will gain 3 votes for Speaker of the House of Representatives. Will there be a 10th vote? I don't know. Going to the chat rooms to see what you are saying. By the way, you can call at 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So Ann Hoy Guzman says it's come time to vote. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. It has come time to vote. It has come time to solve this problem. But who will solve the problem? The person who wants the job can solve the problem. That's Kevin McCarthy. And people say, my gosh, they're constraining the speaker's office to the point where they won't be able to get anything done. That is not correct. Let's see what's going on in the House of Representatives. Let's see here. This is a new procedure inviting people to come to the well of the Senate and speak. We will see if anybody avails themselves of that opportunity. Nothing so far. Let's move on. So when it comes time to vote, yes, Kevin McCarthy, if he wants the speaker's job, should do what's necessary to get it. And people say, my God, it'll constrain the speaker. Yeah, well, as we've seen from Nancy Pelosi, once you're the Speaker of the House, you can control these 20 votes, and you can do so roughly or benevolently, depending on your choice of leadership opportunities at the time. Now, I'm not advocating for Kevin McCarthy to agree to anything and then back away on his promises. That's not Kevin McCarthy, at least not my view of Kevin McCarthy. But what I will say is this: Kevin McCarthy could fix any of this. By the way, someone said, wait a minute, one vote to dump the speaker, it would be chaos. That's not going to happen. One speaker, one person, one congressman can ask for a motion to vacate the chair. There has to be a vote, just like these. And how's it turning out so far? Well, the Democrat caucus has stood foursquare behind the Democrat leader of the U.S. House. They would vote for a vacation of the chair if they chose to, but they would still not have the majority. The Republican Party would have the majority, and the Republican Party would never, ever vacate the chair of Kevin McCarthy unless he malfunctioned at a level that required it. That is something that has to be taken into consideration, too. Let's see what else is going on in the chat room. First, they wanted 4 demands, and now it's 1. Yeah, that's true. Now, you have to understand they're saying the goalposts are moving. Well, the goalposts that they're referring to were set up 8 months ago. Or, excuse me, I'm sorry, November 8th, a few months ago. Things have changed. Things have changed. Nicole Boebert of Colorado provided a list of things that if Kevin McCarthy agreed to, they would vote. They would vote for Kevin McCarthy. He received it smugly and with dismissal. Okay, do you want to be the speaker or not? What are you doing, sir? What are you doing? Let's see, other people have been speaking. Gateway Pundit reports that Steve Bannon is calling for President Donald Trump to be the Speaker of the House. And while that's a possibility, other people have said from President of the United States to Speaker of the House, it's never going to happen. But then again, I said that Kevin McCarthy would be the Speaker of the House, too. So I've gotten a lot of these things wrong from a standpoint of what I've actually been able to see. I was expecting to wake up this morning to one vote for Kevin McCarthy for Speaker with these 20 members of the House Freedom Caucus mollified and a deal struck, etc. From what I understand, there were serious negotiations that were underway, and it wasn't enough. And so they need to go back and keep working on it to do the things that are required for Kevin McCarthy to be the speaker if he wants that job. And you simply have to do that. Now, a lot of people are saying that these people are are hostage takers. First of all, taking hostages is a crime. Accusing somebody, it's a felony, in fact. Accusing your fellow congressmen of being felons is not a way to get them to support your cause or belief. A lot of people say, well, these 20 people are holding the entire Republican caucus hostage. Well, let me ask you this, and I brought this up in a chat earlier today at another source. I said, only 2% of the people of the United States actually fought to create the United States. 2%. A much smaller country then. But a huge number of people just laid back to wait and see. We've waited and saw this government spend $32 trillion they don't have. And Republicans were involved in that too. So when we talk about small minorities creating big change in the United States, there you go. Let me ask you another question. What about the Democrat Party and their small little cabal of people? They call them the Squad. They are progressive, communist, socialists. They are totalitarians. And they have a wonderful nestled place deep in the Democrat Party. Indeed, the Squad walked up and started dictating terms as soon as they got to power. What did the Democrats do? Not much. Nancy Pelosi acquiesced to many things the Squad demanded, to the detriment of the nation. This won't be to the detriment of the nation. These people are asking for constitutional things. They are asking for a return to House order. Most of their demands have nothing to do with any of it. But in order to make all of those things happen, in order for them to have the actual opportunity to affect those changes, they have to have committee assignments in something called the House Rules Committee. And that's what they're asking for. And then somebody says, my God, they have to have the merit to be able to get those chairmanships in those places. They have to demonstrate their merit. Well, to who? To the same leadership that has us $32 trillion in debt. That's who. Do we want to keep doing that? I don't think so. Let's see. The head of the caucus said this morning, because all the negotiations have been leaked, it's a no for McCarthy. Who leaked it? Who leaked all of that? Something tells me the people that are leaking are the same people that are trying to put pressure on these 20 from the Freedom Caucus. In other words, mainstream Republicans are leaking this. And then there's this. I heard more than one Republican official, congressman, in fact, talking about how, well, if these people don't get out of the way, we'll just find another way to do it. Well, what's the other way that they mentioned? Negotiating a power share with Democrats. That proves everything that these Freedom Caucus members have been saying. When the Republican Party gets into trouble, they run to Democrats for help. Has that worked? Do I need to bring up $32 trillion again? It hasn't helped. And that is what Republicans, mainstream Republicans, are indeed suggesting will happen. Like it or not, there are plenty of people that believe in what these Freedom Caucus members are trying to get done. They believe in them. Should those people just be cast aside? Should they just be set aside as nothing? I don't believe that should be the case. Should they be circumvented by dealing with the Democrats? Again, I would say that would be disastrous. The Republican Party is dysfunctional, not because of this, but because of their unwillingness to lead a great nation. This great nation is hearing from people who disagree. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to use parliamentary silliness with the other side in order to circumvent, disenfranchise the votes of these members. Are you okay with that? I'm not okay with that. Let's see, if McCarthy cared, he'd step aside for someone else in the position. I see, and this is where I differ from the members of the Freedom Caucus that I've been talking about. I don't believe that Kevin McCarthy should step aside. I believe what he should do is he should make a deal, whatever it is, and get the job and get going. He believes that he should have this job. He believes he has earned this job. Well, who did he earn it with? The other members of the same mealy-mouthed moderate Republican caucus that has ruled the roost in the House of Representatives for all these years? Yeah, that's what I think. That's what I think he's doing. He's listening to the wrong people. He needs to listen to all the people and make a deal. Let's see. Mike points out, $32 trillion, and they've already passed another $1.7 trillion that was signed off on not by Republican members of the House of Representatives, but by Republican members of the United States Senate. Let's talk about the swamp. All this is going on, and meanwhile, people are saying, my gosh, the Senate and all their wonderful collegiousness. My goodness gracious, President Trump was even there shaking hands with Mitch McConnell. Yeah, Mitch McConnell and President Biden. President Biden has come to the Senate and shaken hands with Mitch McConnell, the arch enemy. Yeah, there have been a lot of handshakes between Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden. One of them was for a $1.7 trillion omnibus this country cannot afford. So let's talk a little bit about what Kelly had to say. I called my U.S. representative and asked her not to vote for McCarthy. I was told she already had voted for McCarthy. I asked, had she gotten any input from her constituents? The person at the office said, yes, we're keeping a tally. The next question was, but she's already voted. The girl was short and told me that Representative Bice feels like she knows what's best for Oklahomans. That's the problem. These people believe they know what's best for the United States of America. What does the United States of America think? 2 surveys. 1, congressional approval ratings are less than 20% in these United States. That's been ongoing forever. Survey number 2, what is the biggest threat to freedom and liberty in the United States of America? Why, the U.S. government. And these people are worried about a slippery slope that's being created by these Freedom Caucus members? I don't think so. The slippery slope has gone the other direction. It is so far gone that there would be Republicans on national television calling for the Republican leadership to circumvent, go around, flank, disenfranchise all of these members for the sake of politics. That is the point. Representative Bice feels like she knows what's best for Oklahomans. So Kelly then asked, well, what's the tally so far? Against McCarthy, 60%. For McCarthy, 40%. So how does Representative Bice have the gall to say that she knows what's best for Oklahomans? The answer is she's not listening. Again, that's the problem. So my representative, this is Kelly speaking, so my representative turned her back and voted how she wanted instead of voting with the majority of the people in her district. She lost my vote today. She is part of the swamp. Yes, Kelly, she most assuredly is. All right, so Mike says, well, please understand that the omnibus, $1.7 trillion omnibus was passed by a lame duck session. Another reason to stop lame duck sessions. Yeah, you can't do it. But like I said, there are only 2 kinds of politicians in Washington. Both are dangerous. 1, politicians elected. 2, lame duck politicians that are about to leave. It's not good. Rhino has become an outdated term. It assumes that there are others in the party with substance. But according to Mike, this party has no substance. Let me comment on that. The comment that I have is very straightforward. The Republican Party used to stand for low taxes and small government. What do they stand for now? Do you have any idea? I know what they stand for. Political expedience and political opportunity. They couldn't care less what the people of the United States want or need, or whether the Constitution is followed or not. They're just simply playing politics. That is the reason. That is the reason. There are other people that have other words. I'll share them with you as we continue. Vote number 9 is in the books. Vote number 10 possibly around the corner. Perhaps a motion to reconvene at another time. We will follow the story until the story is told. This is the Wells Report, covering the news, analysis, commentary, and debate. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. It seems as though there will be one more vote today, and then someone will make a motion to adjourn. Will they stay through the weekend? Well, I would. If I was in charge, I'd make them stay through the weekend. I'd make them keep showing up until they make a decision. That's what I would do. And that is simply all there is. I would make them stay until they figure it out. Now, I want to make this plain. I am not against Speaker McCarthy. I'm not against his speakership at all. But I am learning about Kevin McCarthy. I'm learning about a guy that will want it his way, or he will continue to put this nation through this. He needs to fix this. That's what leaders do. That's what leaders do. And so the vote tallies for the 9th vote are being announced. Cheryl Johnson is the clerk that is currently doing this.
The state of Oklahoma has received 3.
Okay, and that's the list. And then they will make nominations.
With 1 recorded as present.
They will make a nominations for the next round of voting.
No member-elect having received a majority of the votes cast, a speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
This is great. There are some kids sitting in the House chamber alongside the person who is speaking. This is wonderful. These kids are learning about the United States of America in real time,
the gentleman is recognized.
In person. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The American dream is a dream.
Let's take a look at this.
The American dream is a dream worth fighting for. And I know in my hearts of hearts that Kevin McCarthy is the man to lead us as we work to fulfill that dream for everyone in every state and in every district. Everyone in this chamber understands the need to serve our constituents. It's who elected us, and it's our responsibility. Kevin understands this as well as anyone. He has dedicated his life to spreading opportunity for all through the private sector and the public sector. You know, this place is a special place for me. My first time on the Hill was back when I was an intern in 2003. My mom visited, and I remember walking her around the halls of Congress as if I owned the place. Well, just a few days ago, I got to walk my mom around one more time this special place, but now as a member-elect of the United States House of Representatives. The American dream is alive. I believe it. I've gotten to know Kevin McCarthy well. He secured a Republican majority in the United States House and laid out a plan to deliver for the American people. There's one thing that I know about Kevin McCarthy. He cares about the American people. He cares about our country and is here not to be somebody, but to do something. And that has been laid out in his commitment to America, to fight for an economy that is strong, a nation that is safe, a future that is built on freedom, and a government that is accountable. This I can strongly get behind. This country gave me and my family an opportunity to achieve the American dream. Friends, I was born in Mexico. The best way that I can tell you who I am is through a short conversation I had with my dad when I told him I was going to run for office. This conversation, of course, in Español, in Spanish. My dad asked me, Juan, where else could we have our story? We come to this country, we immerse in the culture, we learn English, we go through the long journey and become US citizens. He said, I drive a bus my whole life, and now my son has a shot at becoming a member of the United States Congress. Where else in the world could we have our story?
The answer is nowhere. Representative Siscomani, I believe those are his children, perhaps his wife, standing right next to him. Outstanding. Outstanding.
But where else in the world could any of us have our story? Regardless of our background, regardless of where we come from, what side of the aisle we sit on, we have the privilege and opportunity to sit here today as part of a historic moment, fighting for what we believe.
Representative
The answer
Juan
of where else
Siscomani, the Arizona
nowhere
6th
else.
District, is
Only here.
nominating Kevin
I trust
McCarthy
Kevin
for
to
Speaker.
fight for that
We will
American
come
dream.
back and let you know who else is
Because he's a
nominated.
product of it.
I'm sure Hakeem Jeffries
We're all
will also be
products.
nominated, the Democrat
Yes.
leader of the
Because
Democrat
understand that a
caucus
government
of the House of
accountable
Representatives.
is the
What we're
best tool
doing
to
here is we're
ensure that
watching
our
America
future generations
unfold.
continue to
This
have a real
is
shot
very, very
at the
good.
American dream.
This serves
So
notice
let's
to
be
the
proud of
Republican
our
Party
story.
that politics
Let's
as
be
usual
grateful to God for it
is
all.
a 20th
Let's
century
get to work
concept.
to ensure
Finally.
that everyone
This is the Wells
has the
Report.
same
Stay right where you are. We'll be back with hour number
opportunity to write
2
their own story.
in just a moment.
Being a representative isn't a job title. It's a job description.
All right, so I'm going to leave this up
The
so that
eyes
you
of the
guys can
world
watch it. So we'll
We are
talk later.
airing our grievances. That's the cost of leadership. The leadership that comes from this body. So let's act like it. Let's step up to that calling that our country needs and our districts expect from us. I am confident we will resolve this issue and will stand united to fight for the values that matter to the American people. The American people who sent us here to tackle inflation, to protect our border, to hold the executive branch accountable. It's time to do the job we were entrusted to do, to get results for the American people that sent us here. And the best person to lead us in this journey and in this fight to defend the American dream for all is Kevin McCarthy. And I am proud to stand here before you today as the first naturalized citizen in the history of Arizona to win a congressional seat. Proud of the work of my parents, my dad, who drove a bus for most of his life, my mom, a homemaker. We grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment. Didn't own a home until I was in college. But my story is not unique. I washed cars with my dad in the same neighborhood that our office sits today. We're not here celebrating one particular story. We're here celebrating the American opportunity, only found here. Being born from this body as well, as the opportunities of our country have gone. And all of you in this room have that story. I strongly believe that we all have a car wash story, a story where we began. And in spite of all the challenges, in spite of all the obstacles, we are here. And each one of us are a testament to the opportunity and the greatness of this country. And that is why we are here. And I strongly believe that Kevin McCarthy is the person to lead this body in this new fight, this next 118th Congress. So, at the direction of the Republican Conference, I advance the name of Kevin McCarthy as the next Speaker of the House of the 118th Congress.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise again to nominate Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Clerk, I want to thank my colleague on the other side of the aisle for sharing his American dream story and for his family for being here with him at his side. It is our hope that this chamber gets down to the business so he and all the new members in this chamber can be sworn in to do the work of the people. That's why House Democrats stand united again on this ballot to make sure that Hakeem Jeffries is the lead vote getter in this chamber. And it's also why it's important, just like I relayed a few days ago, Madam Clerk, the importance of the character of Hakeem Jeffries, who he is, his story, and why he should be given an opportunity to lead this chamber. In New York, after the 5th grade, you can't get on a bus to go to school anymore. You have to take alternate means. You can walk or you can take a train. In 6th grade, he and his brother would walk to the train station, take the train, get off the train, and walk to school. Now, there's a little disagreement in the Jeffries household as to how many days his father took him on that route before he let him navigate that route with his younger brother. The character it takes for an older brother in 6th grade and his fourth grade little brother to go to school each and every day in New York, to be on their own, to handle themselves, and to handle each other. That's the character of this man.
Maybe if I turn my mic up. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What do? We report the news. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That's not news. That's simply my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. That is what we do. We are following an historic story. A speaker's election in the House of Representatives of the United States. So far, 9 votes have been taken. 10 votes are upcoming. We have discussed the ins and outs, the political ideologies, the intransigence of not just the 20 from the Freedom Caucus, but also the intransigence of the man who would be Speaker of the House. This standoff is being played out before the American people, thankfully. Thankfully, it's being played out. We don't want to see the sausage being made in the background. We don't want to see that. What we want to do is we want to see what these people are doing in the people's house. Hakeem Jeffries just nominated for the speakership of the United States House of Representatives. The other side now will nominate others.
Florida rise.
Madam Speaker, I would like to rise to nominate Byron Donalds for Speaker of the House.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
I've known Byron for roughly about 4 years now, and being that he's from the state of Florida, I can tell you that I've come to know him on both the campaign trail and personally. But I want to clarify something real quick to my colleagues across the aisle. What you're seeing with this discussion does not mean that we are dysfunctional. And in no way, shape, or form will a Democrat ever hold the gavel to a Republican-controlled House. These discussions and dialogues have actually been good for the American people. And although the media tries to pit us against each other, I can tell you that it's been something that we need as a country. There are people that are frustrated with this process. Byron, through this entire time, has done something that I think most leaders should do more of, and that is listen. Respect people when they're talking. Understand the needs of the American people. Be willing to take negotiations, but also to realize when is a proper time to stand your ground on certain things. I asked my colleagues today to support him. I think he's an incredible representation of what this country is, and that is exactly why he has my vote for Speaker of the House.
Representative Anna Luna of Florida, just speaking. Nicole Boebert from Colorado is now stepping to the lectern.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Colorado rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Kevin Hern of Oklahoma for Speaker of the House.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
It's as simple as that, folks. Let's start getting somewhere with this. Realize the facts. Kevin McCarthy does not have the votes. Let's elect a Republican who can unify our conference, who is a true leader. I'm casting my vote for Kevin Hern, and I hope you will as well. I yield.
The reading clerk will call the roll.
And so there we have it. That will be four people running for Speaker of the House, and this roll call will continue. We'll keep our eyes on it to determine just exactly when and if Kevin McCarthy loses this vote. I don't know that he will. We shall see, because you never really know. You don't know. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia has pointed out that she believes good things are about to happen. Please stand with this process. Okay, we'll do that. And so let's watch. Getting back to the chat room. We there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. The world's greatest publicist, Jube Dankworth, is saying that Pennsylvania legislators just accepted a third-party speaker of the state house. Indeed.
McCarthy.
By the way, there's also been a point made where in the Texas House, Texas Republicans, who are in the majority, are allowing Democrat chairmen of certain committees. That is ridiculous. I've always said so. I will continue to believe so. Gary says the squad, I believe the Democrat squad was going to be a fluke. Boy, was I wrong. Yeah, that's because the Democrat Party is, for all intents and purposes, a socialist totalitarian body.
Bacon.
And now we'll see the same thing. It was Jube Dankworth who said we'll see the same thing in Austin next week when they give Democrats committee chairmanships. It's awful. The fact that Fred Upton's name has been mentioned as a solution is a sad statement. The Democrats would love that. Well, perhaps not. Jube Dankworth points out that what we're seeing here with this is the uniparty. It's not just the uniparty. This is a political machine. The political machine of the left, along with the media and selected members of the politicians of the right, along with the nation's law enforcement and intelligence agencies, all banding together to rule this nation as a ruling class of elites. A ruling class of elites that would do what they want as opposed to what the people want. This political machine needs to be dismantled. What we're seeing here are valiant Americans attempting to do just that. So why are they voting for the position before the new folks are sworn in? Is that a Constitution thing or a rules thing? I mean, it's a new Congress. It should have the new members voting. The new members are voting. They are congressional elects. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is elected by the Speaker, by the the representative elects. That's how they do this. Just like the new Congress would have voted for the budget for the new year. That was turned aside, thankfully, to Mitch McConnell, the leader of the spongy, middle-of-the-road, Democrat-enabling Senate Republicans. It was awful. It was just absolutely awful. That he did that tells you that there is a far deeper divide in the Republican Party than just this House Speaker vote.
Bishop of North Carolina.
Let's see. It's my understanding McCarthy raised no objections to McConnell about passing the omnibus instead of a continuing resolution. That could possibly be the case. I don't know what objection he would. As a matter of fact, Mark, he did raise objections. He was very vocal in the fact that he thought that was a mistake. So that information isn't necessarily accurate. Okay. Yvonne says, I don't know what you did to your equipment, but now I'm getting a really good picture with no delayed speech anymore. That's always good. Who wants to delay speech? Well, aside from the FBI, the DOJ, the Department of State, the IRS, all these other executive branch agencies. The Speaker does the swearing in. It actually starts the Congress. Gary Absher, speaking for millions of Americans, north to south, coast to coast, says a standing harumph. Absolutely. Let's see. If all these nominated leaders are so great, why do they keep changing them?
Buchanan.
Well, because they can.
McCarthy.
They can. What they're doing is they're making political statements. What they're doing is they're trying to offer alternatives. That's what they're trying to do.
Bouchon.
And I happen to believe that that Byron Donalds is perhaps the best one they put up so far, because he seems to be the guy
Jeffries.
that actually understands
Perkins.
that humility leads as opposed to ego. I can't say the same thing about Kevin McCarthy. Let's see, Anhoy Guzman, that is what I saw and read. If you have contradicting information, please share. I will. I'll talk about that if once I find it. Let's see. Brad says, and I wonder why I drink. I don't wonder why I drink. I mean, I do this job every day.
McCarthy.
And I gotta say this. I just have to say this.
Kamek.
I hate politics. You know, I've been looking to put the
Caraveo.
Wells Report back on a Dallas-Fort Worth
Jeffries.
radio station. I spoke to a program director who said, we don't need old white guys talking about
Jeffries.
politics. That is not what this show is
Cardenas.
about. This show is not about politics. This show is about the
Jeffries.
news. And that the
Karen.
federal government has
McCarthy.
consumed the
Carl.
majority of minutes of news coverage from one end of this nation to the other tells you what's wrong with the federal government. Reread the Constitution. It's 4
Carson.
pages. 4.
Jeffries.
It limits government. What we have
Carter,
now is not a
Georgia.
limited government. And the
McCarthy.
people that are voting against Kevin
Carter,
McCarthy have
Louisiana.
recognized that he is a part of that very same uniparty, and they want
Carter,
somebody else.
Louisiana.
Are they correct? Who knows? Who knows whether they're correct or not?
Carter of Texas.
Do I believe that Kevin McCarthy, once given the speakership, would do
McCarthy.
most of the things they want? Yes, I absolutely do. I absolutely
Jeffries.
believe that indeed Kevin McCarthy will be the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Jeffries.
But what we have to understand, and the point of all of this is, it's very simple.
Jeffries.
The federal government is not supposed to have this much sway over the people of the United States. I am not a political junkie.
Jeffries.
That's not what I want to do. I want to report other things.
Jeffries.
There's been a great deal of news. By the way, I do have to break into this and say the following.
McCarthy.
Damar Hamlin, safety for the Buffalo Bills, woke up last night, and in conversations had by writing down things, first of all, he can write. Yes. One of his first questions was, so who won the game?
Giovanni.
So he is neurologically intact. We'll see if he's physically intact. And I wanted to say that. These are the things that I want to report on, not sports per se, but just the things that are important to America.
Clark of
The
Massachusetts.
news. I don't appreciate what's going on here. On the other hand,
Clark of New York.
I believe that it's absolutely essential to the health of this nation, because we do have a problem.
Jeffries.
The problem we have is a uniparty. The problem we have is a political machine that shows no sign of relenting
Cloud.
until they all receive what they're looking for, which is the United Socialist States of America. And the Republicans have shown that they are enablers of Democrat policy instead of fighting for their own policy.
Clyburn.
We do need a unifying, the party does need, I say we because I'm talking about we, the people of the United States, not we Republicans. I'm not a Republican. I'm a constitutional conservative. The Republican Party lost me a long time ago because of this ridiculous need to do the party's business instead of the people's business. It's absolutely unconscionable
Jeffries.
that we would have this situation.
Cole.
So just for the sake of, so you know exactly where my heart is, what I want to see is I want to see a Republican Party that operates in,
McCarthy.
shall we say, adversarial ways to the Democrat Party. Not because I want gridlock and I want things to grind to a halt,
Costa.
but because a two-party system only works when there are two parties. Bipartisanship is not that.
Jeffries.
Bipartisanship is essential in many cases,
Jeffries.
but not when it comes to a nation with a $32 trillion debt and a $1.7 trillion bill that was just signed off by Senate Republicans. That's the way I see it. And so, as we take a look at the tally board is not there on C-SPAN. Also, by the way, you'll note that there are some camera angles that we have never seen in the House of Representatives. That's because the House of Representatives has allowed C-SPAN to provide all these pictures. They have cameras on the floor for the first time ever. And it was absolutely heartening to me to see exactly what we saw moments ago, which was the family of a congressman sitting in the chamber, the children watching this, because this is going to be their nation. The decisions made today and in the coming days, if necessary, those decisions will affect their lives. They have a dog in the hunt. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us. Back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us.
Gallego.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We are watching the 10th vote of the United States House of Representatives. The congressional elect for office who have yet to be sworn in are voting for their speaker. There have been 10 votes so far. McCarthy has lost all of them. Kevin McCarthy, the representative from California, has lost every single vote. Now, will there be an 11th vote? We don't know. It's typically time when someone will step up to the lectern and ask for a recess. Yesterday, there was just that. What ended up happening is that there was a yeas and nays vote by electronic means in the House of Representatives, and the motion was agreed to. So the body adjourned, and there was deal making. There needs to be more. Kevin McCarthy needs to do the right thing and make sure that the people that are opposing him get the things that they want. He has to make a deal. He has to show the leadership required to herd the cats in the U.S. House of Representatives, of which there are many. C-SPAN is reporting 11th speaker vote is possible today. We will see indeed if that happens. And so we wait. So let's see. The Republicans are afraid, since they were threatened to be kicked off committees if they don't vote for Kevin. That's absolutely true. There were threats being made against members for not voting for Kevin McCarthy. Some of them were levied against these same 20 people. Kevin McCarthy has done a lot to engineer his own fate here, and that must not be lost. And you must not be sucked into these talking points that say, my goodness gracious, the speaker would be hamstrung by these demands. No more hamstrung than any other speaker before Nancy Pelosi, who changed all the rules that the Freedom Caucus members that are opposing Kevin McCarthy are now trying to change back. Many of the things they're asking for are for regular order in the House of Representatives, and Kevin McCarthy is fighting that. When it comes down to, say, for example, the motion to vacate the chair, it came down to there was a demand by Byron Donalds, who has been named as a possible other candidate to replace Kevin McCarthy. He said it should be one. And so Kevin McCarthy made that deal. That has been the way it has always been in the House of Representatives, again, until Nancy Pelosi became the speaker. So let's see what else. No more land of the bad lip sync. That was Yvonne Field talking about the fact that from time to time on this broadcast, it sort of looked like a Chinese kung fu movie. And there you go. Let's see. Mark Greer asked, by the way, who was the news director? Who was the news director's alternative to an old white guy? Well, I can't. I'm not going to tell you who the program director was, but I am going to tell you that that particular program director believes that America should be talking about things other than this. Now, I can understand that this is not especially scintillating radio. I get it. But I also understand that this is history. If I was on a radio station, would I be able to do all of this? No. Is that liberating? Yes. If I could continue doing this show the way I need to do this show, I would love every single second of it. I would. That is not the case. If you'd like to help out, I can tell you how. Somebody's going to have to ask on the chat room. I'll show you, or I'll tell you. But that being said, I believe that this is important. I believe that the news of the day is the agenda for the American people. I believe the federal government demands too much of that agenda. And it is not up to me to decide what news is and what news isn't. I'm going to report the news that is the most important on this broadcast. And if it's politics, I may hate it, but I've got to do it because this is bigger than me. Something I hope that Kevin McCarthy eventually figures out. There's more. We'll get back to the chat room as we continue on the Wells Report. Again, my sincere thanks for being with us today as we cover the news. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Thanks for joining us today. We are covering the third day of deliberations for the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And it looks as though Kevin McCarthy is going to go down to defeat for the 10th time. Many people say that it's been a century since we've seen something like this. It's true. 1923, a century ago, it took 9 votes for the Speaker of the House, so we've eclipsed that. The immovable object, the irresistible force coming together in the House of Representatives to create this standoff. What will be the next thing? Well, 2 things could happen. One, someone could move to adjourn, or someone could indeed ask for or allow an 11th vote. People have wondered, wait a minute, are these guys going to go ahead and adjourn until, say, Monday? No. If I was running the show, they'd be here until they figured it out. I wouldn't let them out. I wouldn't let them out under any circumstance whatsoever. You figure this out. Because that's the people's business. That is the people's business. This is between Kevin McCarthy and 20 members of the Freedom Caucus. If he is going to lead the House of Representatives, he first has to lead his entire conference. Is he doing so? The answer is no. Is he perfectly willing to not lead the entire conference? Yes, because we've seen it. So what's he willing to do? Well, he's willing to put his own ego before the entire country of these United States. And people say, no, it's the other way around. It's these 20 that are holding the entire American government hostage. It needs to be held hostage. It's $32 trillion in national debt. The southern border is wide open, and they have done nothing to close it. By the way, there were people that said, it was actually the president of the United States today said the Republicans aren't serious about closing this border. Oh, really? I take you back to President Donald Trump, Mr. President, who has fought every step of the way to close the border of the United States. Every 10 days, enough Americans die of fentanyl poisoning from that very same border. Every 10 days, enough Americans die on that very same border to equal the death toll of 9/11. And that border's still open? Again, if it was up to me, that border would be closed, except for the international ports of entry. And oh, by the way, if you're planning on crossing one of those international ports of entry, pack a lunch, because we're going to make sure that nothing is coming into this country that isn't supposed to. And I don't know why that hasn't happened already. This is a chemical attack against the United States, not my words. Those are the words from the sheriffs down on that border. Yes, I have served on that border. I know exactly what's going on down there. It's worse than you think. It has always been worse than you think. And this is my second time. It was my second time down there. I might go down for a third time. Because somebody has to do something. And if all I can do is go down there and help the military effort on the border of Texas and Mexico, then by God, I will. But I happen to believe that this is important. I happen to believe that this work is essential for the people of the United States. And so I'm not trying to aggrandize here. I'm just trying to tell you what I think. I'm not talking about me per se. I'm just talking about the work. Something I learned a long time ago. Again, something that I encourage Kevin McCarthy, an example I encourage Kevin McCarthy to take up. It's not about you, sir. It's about this nation. Make the deal. Make the deal. Make the deal. Gary says, oh, by the way, if this is a chemical attack, how come the military is not heavy on it? Because it hasn't been identified as a chemical attack by the people that own the military. Greg Abbott knows exactly what's going on. But remember, when states try to close that border, they are immediately sued by the Biden administration. Again, that's not a partisan statement. That's the news. Now, if I was As a matter of fact, Governor Abbott tried to use the existing materials that were being used under the Trump administration to build that wall. The federal government said, no, you can't use it. So it sits in the sun and rots, waiting for someone with the American intent to have a border between the United States and Mexico. Thank you very much, Clint. Appreciate that. Let's see, a lot of comments to the effect that this is harmful that have been posted on various sites. Obviously, a lack of a civics background. That too, by the way, that too is by design, because it's really, really tough to teach physics when there's someone who has various interests in, shall we say, unconventional wardrobe rolling around on the floor in front of your kids. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Here's the latest vote tally. 133 for McCarthy, 127 for Jeffries, 128 now. Donalds has 6 votes. Hearn has 6 votes. That's 12. Expect McCarthy to garner another 201 votes. Jeffries to garner another 212 votes. Donalds, interesting that his support has waned with other candidates being put forward by other people. So there you go. Let's get back to okay. Let's get back to the chat room. These people. Let's see. Gary says, cool, you're drumming at 65. Yeah, well, old drummers never die. Somebody gave me a t-shirt over Christmas. It was actually my son Mitchell and his wife. They gave me a t-shirt that says, never underestimate an old man with a drum set. I can still play. Not like I used to be able to, but I'm practicing. By the way, Gary also agrees with me. We need to lock these guys in these chambers and make them come up with a deal. That's what they need to do. Let's see. Gary also says, from what I understand, McCarthy doesn't care about the border. Well, many things have been said. The other thing that really disturbed me, by the way, and this truly disturbed me, was there are reports that Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, is not intending to allow the release of all the January 6th documents. I'm sure Jim Jordan of the Judiciary Committee, once this is all said and done, he'll be the chairman. I'm sure he'll have something else to say about that. But remember, that's got to go to a House vote. And so if the Speaker has the same kind of power that Nancy Pelosi had, then it's possible that the Speaker would, shall we say, engineer the release of all those documents to be quashed again. And that would be the end of the Republican Party, at least as far as the House of Representatives would be concerned. I would very likely run for Congress immediately in my district as a conservative. I would hate to do it because Beth Van Dyne is a friend of mine. I think she's amazing. She's absolutely incredible. She's a supporter of Kevin McCarthy. And regardless of what you hear me say, so am I. But Kevin McCarthy has to understand that it's not about him. He's got to understand that it is about the people of the United States. And whether he likes it or not, the 20 people that are opposing him for Speaker of the House were elected by the people of the United States. They matter. They count. And he has to find a way to bridge that gap. He absolutely does. Let's see. Mark says, I have a friend that works in a Texas state agency that is in Laredo at this time. He said it was not good, but better than Brownsville or El Paso. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. It must be taken care of forthwith. It absolutely must. Let's see. What else do we have going on here? Let me go back to something that I was planning on doing earlier today, which was to evoke some other comments that of a group that I'm a part of, and let me see if I can make that happen. Here, okay, here we go. Let's see. I was a part of this discussion earlier. Jason of this particular chat room says, change isn't always pretty. McCarthy isn't the one to reform the House rules to rein in spending and fight the Democrats. He has no principles. He just follows the polls. Philip said, remember, McCarthy could get the votes if he agrees to 4 requests from the Freedom Caucus. a balanced budget amendment, a fair tax act, the Texas border plan, and term limits. Some of you want him to be speaker when he opposes these things. Seriously, don't budge. Hold the line. I agree. I absolutely agree. Damani says in 1856, it took 133 rounds of voting over 2 months to choose the House Speaker. Nathaniel P. Banks. Keep voting, representatives. We've got time. We do. We do. Let's see. My former colleague, Wayne Allen Root, says McCarthy's middle name now is No. 8 is not enough. Still no. Come on, Maverick Trump, engage. Get in the battle. Donald Trump does not want to be the Speaker of the House. I'm sure if he is called, that he would most assuredly take the job. But he and other people are saying that it would be a good idea, and it would be interesting. It would never happen. The idea would be that he would be Speaker for 100 days. I don't know that that would be the case, and I also don't know that that would even be a good idea. The House of Representatives is a body in and of itself. A former president of the United States would turn it into something else, would turn it into essentially a nonstop campaign commercial for President Trump. I think that President Trump should stay where he is. Would he make a good Speaker of the House? Maybe. We don't know. Remember, this guy didn't have any experience with the federal government aside from dealing with it before he was elected president of the United States. It would, however, be an interesting thing to see. Yes. Let's see. Gary Absher points out yet again that he is the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to the over-under. When all of this got started, I was discussing the fact that the over-under of votes for Speaker of the House of Representatives would be 7, and I invited you to take the over, more than 7, or the under, less than 7. We had 2 that took the under. Only Gary took the over, and he said 13 votes. You are still on track, my friend. You are still on track. Let's see. Very few want Trump as Speaker. That is true, including President Trump, by the way. He just needs to lay off the abortion comments. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he absolutely does. So there you go. Let's get back to the actual vote tallies at this particular moment, and I hit the wrong button. Let me try this one more time. All right. That's still, I hit the wrong button. The other wrong button. Okay. 154 votes for Kevin McCarthy of California. 172 votes for Hakeem Jeffries. The entire Democrat caucus will continue to vote for Hakeem Jeffries. Donalds now has 11 votes. Hearn has 7. That's Kevin Hearn of Oklahoma. Byron Donalds of Florida is somebody who could, by the way, that person in the middle of the screen right there is Pete Sessions, longtime congressman who took a term off and then moved to another district and then was immediately elected. He is an old hand in Washington. Sure would like to know what he has to say. Maybe I'll give him a buzz during the break. I think I probably will do that and see if he answers his phone. See what I can do about getting somebody on the air to talk to us a little bit about all this. So as we continue, this will go to an 11th vote unless there is an adjournment. That is probably what's going to happen, as it is 5:42 in the District of Columbia. So let's listen to some of these votes and see if your favorite congressman is speaking.
Washington, Jeffries, Smucker, McCarthy, Sorensen.
By the way, in the middle of the picture, the picture that we just had, right by the doors was Beth Van Dyne, the congresswoman from the Texas 24th or 25th. I think it's 25th.
Jeffries, Sparks,
Representative Sparks was the person who voted present. Let's see if she does it again.
Stansberg,
And she was not there to record her vote.
Jeffries.
She'll be asked to record her vote when the alibi session comes immediately after this.
Stanton, Jeffries, Stauber, McCarthy, Steele, McCarthy, Stefanik, McCarthy, Style, McCarthy. Stube. McCarthy. Stevens. Jeffries. Stewart. McCarthy. Strickland. Jeffries. Strong. McCarthy.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Stay right where you are. Actually, that was wrong. I had 14 seconds left, and I went to the break too early. It's what happens sometimes. That's just the way it is. This is the Wells Report. Now, we'll be back in just a moment.
California.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. I am not an expert on the House of Representatives. I am, however, a pretty serious person when it comes to the actual art of broadcasting in the United States. I've been taking a look at these pictures. Let me go ahead and expand that one more time. Been taking a look at these pictures, and there are an awful lot of people on phones, a lot of Democrats interacting with each other. A lot of members of the opposing Freedom Caucus is, once again, they are, I believe, explaining either what their next move is going to be or whether or not they're going to adjourn for the day. The question is, will they come back? I certainly hope they do. We'll see in the adjournment when they decide to come back. Will it be later on this evening as it was yesterday? They came back at 8 o'clock. Or will it be, say, for example, Monday, which I would vehemently oppose? But a lot of high-level conversations are going on as we speak, and a lot of texts are being made. And I wonder, let's listen to the clerk now. These are the people that did not answer the first time. That's what's going on. There were several, notably Sparks of Nevada, Sparts rather, Sparts or Z. Anyway, she was not there. You'll note that there are 190 votes for Kevin McCarthy. That means that many of the Republicans that have been voting for Kevin McCarthy were not able to answer in the first roll call.
Donalds.
So Donalds now has 12 votes, with Kevin Hearn from Oklahoma garnering 7.
Buck.
There may only be one more vote from the opposing members of the Freedom Caucus. But 191 votes.
McCarthy.
McCarthy has been getting 201 this whole time.
Davidson. McCarthy. Donalds.
Byron Donalds votes for himself, and that would be the rest of the opposing members of the caucus, save Representative-elect Sparts from Nevada.
McCarthy. Hemmer. McCarthy.
And so the process will continue and has continued for the last 3 days. There will be an 11th vote. We will see whether or not we have time to continue this broadcast to go ahead and wait until the end of this vote and perhaps the beginning of the next one. I started this show late because I had doctor's appointments that I did not cancel because I didn't think that we would be here. I really did not believe that we would be in a situation where we would be seeing this protracted fight for the Speaker of the House. I got to be personally honest. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things. David Bailey, one of the great friends of the Wells Report, says, why don't they just adjourn until they have the votes for one person? Seems like a huge waste of time. Yeah, I can understand that, but I don't necessarily believe that it's a waste of time. That's thing number one. Thing number two, this intransigence is both ways, and they simply have to fix it. They've got to fix it. There are two people involved in this. This is a case of it does take two to tango, and there are two in this. Kevin McCarthy on one side and the opposing members of the Freedom Caucus on the other. Let's see. They're thinking that it's going to be a request next time to adjourn, mainly because it's happy hour in Washington, D.C., and maybe a little whiskey would get them to compromise, says Gary. I think so. Let's see. This is the process. It needs to be in the open. Too many deals have been struck in back rooms. Indeed, the famous one is the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill that was crafted in the office of the Speaker while Nancy Pelosi was there. That was then dumped on the entire House of Representatives 24 hours before the vote. Too many deals have been struck in back rooms. That needs to end. Debates need to be held on the House floor. Moreover, there needs to be an amendment process to some of these bills. They have that in the Senate. They call it a vote-a-rama. And while I'm not really interested in seeing a lot of people continue to make ridiculous and useless amendments, I could see that some of the amendments that come forward should be at least discussed. Yeah, stand by. Here's the clerk.
Then they may come to the well and vote at this time.
I see. I believe that everybody has voted. 212, that's the Democrat caucus. 201 plus 21, and that is the case. So now the people will tally up the votes, and we will move to an 11th vote or an adjournment. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this break, but I'm going to come back. I started the show late today because of doctor's appointments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back after the top of the hour. and continue the broadcast. Let's see. Except the deals aren't happening in the open, still some happen in private. People have learned nothing about those deals except our politicians are absolutely incompetent and don't serve the people. That is correct. I believe, David, that that's what this fight is all about. What about Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan being put up there? Matt Gaetz is entirely too divisive. So what we will do is I'll go ahead and put the proceedings up there and allow you to see those while I take a quick break. Believe me, it's necessary. While I take a quick break, and then we'll be finished to see what happens next, see if there's an 11th vote or an adjournment on the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment.
Well, for those of you keeping a scorecard, the top two numbers remain the same. Hakeem Jeffries, 212 votes unofficially. Kevin McCarthy, 200. Remember that Ken Buck, who was a supporter of Kevin McCarthy, had to leave for a medical appointment. Byron Donalds dropped 4 votes to 13, but those 4 votes went to Kevin Hearn, who now has 7 votes. And again, Victoria Sparks of Indiana voted present. So the 2021 dissenters from Kevin McCarthy have remained firm throughout the day. Kevin McCarthy retains 90% of the Republican conference. Now let's get you updated on what was going on during that vote as we await for the official results. Jake Sherman longtime congressional reporter, works for Punchbowl now, co-founder of Punchbowl, tweets out, sources tell us a deal between McCarthy and his opponents is close. Chip Roy and Patrick McHenry have been negotiating it. Chip Roy is an anti-McCarthy person. Patrick McHenry is a strong supporter. All the big players are now in Republican Whip Tom Emmer's first floor office. Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, another dissenter, says he expects an offer in writing tonight. Now, to follow that up, that Jake Sherman tweet, a reporter with Semaphore tweets out that Ralph Norman told reporters that leadership is, quote, putting things in writing, but the devil's in the details. Specifically, he's concerned with budget. Quote, you can't have a balanced budget unless you have cuts. The speaker has got to be able to use whatever tools he has to influence that. Again, that's Ralph Norman, who has consistently voted against Kevin McCarthy. Eric Wasson, Bloomberg, tweets out, there's a key moment during this last vote in the negotiations. Representative Ralph Norman has entered the negotiation room, invited to look at the deal. And finally, Manu Raju of CNN, who's been up there all day, negotiators pushing to finalize a deal that could help them adjourn for the night and get McCarthy closer to the 218 votes. It's a product born out of talks between GOP leaders and Chip Roy and Scott Perry, chairman of the Freedom Caucus. Chip Roy just told us, quote, a lot of good work has been done today. There's still a lot to be done. Again, that's Manu Raju of CNN. We are awaiting the official results of ballot number 10. We don't know what's going to happen, if there's going to be a ballot number 11 after this or an adjournment. But a reminder that if you have to step away from your TV, go mobile with C-SPAN. Get the C-SPAN Now app. Very user-friendly. You can watch all of this live online on your phone.
This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We are sticking around a little bit longer as we just heard that there are now negotiations underway that are serious. Apparently, by the way, McCarthy only got 200 votes on that particular vote. And we just heard from C-SPAN, that indeed the negotiations are getting down to earnest time, with others being asked to mediate, and we'll see how that works. What we expect is an adjournment as soon as we get the final tallies. We're going to stay on the air until we get those final tallies for this particular vote, number 10. 11th speaker vote is possible, but very unlikely, as it looks as though everybody has got to the point where what they want to do more than anything is they want to adjourn for the day. And what they want to do is get on with the negotiations that would lead to a speaker. So my assessment that yesterday, when they asked for an adjournment and then a re-adjournment, when they would call the House to order at 8 p.m. last night, that those negotiations that I just referred to would indeed happen. That has not happened. And that didn't happen yesterday. Perhaps it will happen today, and we will see. So getting back to some of the chat rooms. What about Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan being put up there? We talked about that last hour. It doesn't look like something is going to happen there. House rules issue should be in the forefront. That is correct. That's a very, very important committee. Pete Sessions, in fact, is a guy who used to be the chairman of that rules committee before he was diselected in his district. And then what ended up happening is, hang on just a minute here. I'm going to try to call him because I can. And this is one of the great things about being able to handle this. It's a situation whereby I I can basically do whatever I want to. So if I want to stay a little longer, I can do that. I often brought that up when I was doing radio. There were times when we had so much news to cover that it got to a point where I really needed to stay just a little bit longer. And I was not allowed to do that because obviously somebody else needed to be on the radio. Let's see. Set that up so that it's my tie clasp is crooked. I don't know why I noticed that. Let me see if this number still works. I'll let you listen in. Yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, let me see if I have another one here. I don't think I've got another number, so I'm going to have to reach out to Congressman Pete Sessions and try to figure out just exactly what's going on. If I can get him on the air. I tried to call Beth Van Dyne and was not successful yesterday. I'll see what I can do. So they're taking a break before voting on adjournment. No, Gary, that's not what's happening. What is happening at this particular moment is that all the clerks get together and verify the votes so that they all agree. Then they are made official. These are unofficial results that you see on your screen as I go back to the C-SPAN feed. Kevin McCarthy with 200. He lost a vote somewhere. Somebody didn't show up to vote in the Republican conference. Jeffries got 212. Everybody showed up for the Democrats, and they are certainly united. We've seen that. Byron Donalds of Florida got 13 votes. Kevin Hearn from Oklahoma got 7. And hang on just a second. Let's listen to CNN.
On the 10th ballot, we don't know what's going to happen afterwards. The woman you've seen up on the dais all day long is Cheryl Johnson. She is the clerk of the House. She's basically been running the show for the last 3 days. There technically isn't a House of Representatives at this point. Now, a minute ago, we read a Manu Raju of CNN tweet talking about a potential deal. And he follows that up with this tweet saying, while that deal will help, it still won't get him to 218 votes. GOP sources say that if they get a deal, it will get him closer. And then they can work to pick off member by member, they hope. Some may vote present to lower the threshold. Jonathan Martin, longtime political reporter with Politico, writes that the irony of Patrick McHenry, a McCarthy supporter, writing a deal with the Freedom Caucus is that he preemptively bailed out of a leadership bid, knowing it would be a mess, and claimed a committee gavel. Now, if McCarthy falls short this time or is overthrown down the road, McHenry may be looked at as an alternative. Matt Fuller is with the Daily Beast, and Matt Fuller tweeted out about half an hour ago, I've said it all along that McCarthy's one strength is that he's willing to do anything for the speakership. I'm not sure anyone else in the Republican conference is willing to offer more for the position. At some point, the holdouts may realize that.
And so that is the state of play. If a deal has been struck between Republican and Democrat leadership, that would be disastrous and invalidate all the comments about the Freedom Caucus causing the chaos. Indeed, what that would be a disaster. It would be just a disaster for the Republican Party and the Republican Conference. I'm certainly hoping that does not happen. And if indeed we see Democrats suddenly voting present as opposed to voting for Hakeem Jeffries, then once again, everything that the opposition members of the Freedom Caucus has been talking about would be proved. And there would be a lot of very upset people if that happened. No, this is on, in my view, this is just my opinion. In my view, this all comes down to Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy is the man who has got to be able to do the deal making necessary to bring his conference into line. That is simply the case. And should he not do that, I think it would speak for itself from a standpoint of just exactly what is wrong with Republicans in the current state of play in American politics. Jube Dankworth points out, by the way, if you want publicity for any event, if you want publicity for anything that you do, contact Jube, Jube, short for jubilation, Jube Dankworth at netmediaconsultants.com. Netmediaconsultants.com. She points out that Speaker McCarthy did indeed lose one more vote, so that would be 22 that would not be voting for Kevin McCarthy in the 10th vote for Speaker. So what we've got here is we've got a circumstance whereby we brought this up because we think there might be a little bit of erosion. McHenry was pointed out by C-SPAN just moments ago that person might be an alternative. We'll have more about that tomorrow on the Wells Report. But like I said, we are currently waiting for the official tally of the 10th vote, and then doubtless someone will come to the lectern and request an adjournment. When will that adjournment? When will the adjournment be over with? Don't know. It could be later tonight. It could be tomorrow. It could be on Monday. If it's Monday, then once again, I believe that the American interests would not be served under those circumstances. And oh, by the way, it would invalidate the arguments that with every vote, the Republican Party looks stupid. If indeed they adjourn until Monday, then the Republican Party is making itself look stupid. They need to stay here. They need to stay here and make this happen. But I cannot stress enough that the intransigence is not just on the part of the opposition members of the Freedom Caucus. This is also Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy saw Nancy Pelosi change the speakership into a far more powerful position in the United States government. And I don't agree with it. I believe that indeed what we need to do is get away from the idea that you have a situation whereby that you have a speakership that is far more powerful than envisioned by the Constitution. I believe that is a complete mistake, and I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Gary said, "Did I hear right? Speakers have been picked with less than 218." Remember, votes by name, which is what the rule says in the House of Representatives, those are the ones that count. People who vote present, they don't cast a vote, and therefore they do not count. So a smaller number of people, likely Democrats, if this deal making that I think would be disastrous for the Republican Party, if indeed Democrats vote present, that would indicate that a deal was struck between Republican and Democrat leadership, which would circumvent and disenfranchise the people who sent the opposition members of the Freedom Caucus to Washington, D.C. People would be the people of the United States. Certainly Republican members of the U.S. population would be infuriated by that, a vast majority of them, and that would not be a good idea come 2 years from now. Stand by, here's C-SPAN.
There will be an 11th vote for Speaker or an adjournment or what? Graham Slattery of Reuters tweets out that a source close to McCarthy has confirmed a deal is on the table. It will not be enough to take him over the line. Sources predict could bring him 10 to 12 holdouts, but that's a guesstimate. Few details on contents, but it does include the one-member motion to vacate, where one member can basically raise the no confidence vote. So that's what we have as an update at this point. We'll continue to watch the floor. Reminder that those are C-SPAN cameras. When you see the different angles rather than the usual House cameras, those are being controlled by C-SPAN. We're allowed in during the opening of the recent Congresses, and we take advantage so we can look at what's going on the floor a little more in detail than we can on a normal day.
Yeah, that is a very good thing. I'm glad that C-SPAN and the House of Representatives agreed to do that. As far as I'm concerned, this ought to be the way the House is covered at all times. I think it would be absolutely essential to continue this. The clerk is back up at the lectern, and we'll have a moment to see everything and call the House back to order, and we will hear what the results of the official results. We know what they are, but we'll see and hear the official results of the 10th ballot for Speaker of the House of Representatives as soon as she calls the House to order. And then following that, there will be an opportunity for people to either nominate candidates for an 11th vote, or they will ask for an adjournment. I suspect the latter. We just heard that a possible deal is on the table that would pick off a few members of the opposition caucus of the Freedom Caucus, and once again, the idea that the Democrat conference would then vote present to lower the threshold necessary for the election of Speaker, then would-be Speaker Kevin McCarthy. That would harbinge, like I said before, a deal between Democrat and Republican leadership in the House, and that would be disastrous. Here we go.
The tellers agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 432, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 200. The Honorable Byron Donalds of the state of Florida has received 13. The Honorable Kevin Hearn of the state of Oklahoma has received 7, with 1 answering present. No member-elect having received a majority of the votes cast, a speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise tonight in the spirit of 1923 to address the House. Madam Clerk,
Does
to
the gentleman
nominate
seek to nominate someone?
Kevin McCarthy for Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
First, let me express my deep appreciation, the appreciation of everybody in this room for the work you're doing, Madam Clerk.
She has done a great job. She's been nonpartisan. She's been right down the center, even though she was a Nancy Pelosi appointee. She's done a great job with this.
Our clerk has...
This is Representative French Hill of Arkansas. He's a
House's
Republican.
Best tradition of preparation and dedication to this institution, and we're grateful. From the first Speaker of the House, the Honorable Frederick Muhlenberg, to the one that will be elected next, Kevin McCarthy. The role of Speaker of the House is one of the most beloved in American history. The Speaker's mission is to carry out the principled goals and objectives of his or her party, while at the same time protecting this institution and the traditions of the People's House, all the while remaining faithful to that imperative in our preamble of the Constitution to promote the general welfare. It's a difficult job. It takes a special personality with deep affection for the House, robust courage, a sense of humor, and great amounts of humility and patience. I've watched Kevin McCarthy for longer than my 8 years serving in this chamber. I can say without hesitation that Kevin has brought these foundational traits of leadership to bear for good of this institution and for the good of the American people. It's said that a nation not in control of her finances cannot control her destiny. And I agree. And from our many conversations over many years, I have no doubt that our next speaker, Kevin McCarthy, agrees. In the Republican Commitment to America, Leader McCarthy charged our Republican conference with taking on his two biggest concerns facing this world and this nation: China and our domestic national debt and deficit. Over the past 2 years, we have lost our way on spending.
Interesting, he did not bring up the
Money
border on
at our
that.
central bank and spending here in Congress like drunken sailors. This bad policy palooza has gone into overdrive in the past 2 years with some $5 trillion of new spending demanded by President Biden and now delivered by the House minority, whose own budget chair famously said there's effectively no limit to what America can print, borrow, and spend. Of course, this is madness, and it's not anchored in any economic tenet. And there's not a single one of us here that isn't demanding a return to fiscal discipline.
I believe
And who
that
can
Representative French Hill
fiscal
misspoke. He said that
discipline?
it was passed by the minority.
McCarthy.
It's actually the majority
On
that
the
passed
point of
that,
spending, let me show
that
you a
omnibus bill.
list of everyone who's written me in the 2nd Congressional District who's asked me to cut spending. I'm holding up a blank piece of paper. No one has asked me to cut spending in writing. And there are not many people who get a lot of mail in this House to cut spending and to set spending priorities. In contrast, we get hundreds of letters asking us to increase spending. But we're at a critical point in this nation's fiscal health, and there's one person to help see us through it: Kevin McCarthy. How do I know? Because he said it himself, and he's identified how to do it. In 2018, then Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy brought a balanced budget amendment to the floor of this House. Mr. McCarthy said, by our actions, we've shown Washington's spending problem can't be boiled down to a lack of will. It's a problem of structure and process, and everyone knows the process of government funding in Washington is broken. He went on to say, when you change structure, you change behavior. And that no matter what, we know that the structure set up by the Congressional Budget Act of 1974 has only worked to its successful completion 4 times in 44 years. We have nothing to lose by making big changes. Let your next speaker on the floor of this House in 2018. Kevin McCarthy is committed to making big changes. We've heard it in our conference meetings. We've heard it in our rules debates. We know this comes to reforming the budget process, fighting to bring all 12 appropriations bills to the floor under regular order and on time, and crafting changes to structurally rein in spending in this House. These changes will bring sanity back to our fiscal process. I'm committed to bringing sanity back to the fiscal process, and I hope every member on this floor will be and follow Mr. McCarthy's lead. Much has been said by our friends on the other side of the aisle, my good friends, the so-called popcorn caucus this week, if you will, over the past few days about 1923, and that we're having a robust discussion here among House Republicans as to who will be the next Speaker of the House. Back in 1923, the insurgency among Republicans then was from the center left of the Republican Party. Today, it's from the center right. But there's more to the story in that fight 100 years ago. And I want to remind you of that history. When Fred Gillette was elected Speaker on the 9th ballot in 1923, the outcome was a more robust, more unified Republican conference, one that would go to work with President Calvin Coolidge, cut government spending, balance the budget, cut taxes while paying down the debt. House Republicans 100 years ago unleashed a pro-growth agenda. House Republicans under Speaker Kevin McCarthy will unleash a pro-growth agenda to get this economy moving. pro-growth agenda benefited families in the 20s. The McCarthy pro-growth agenda will benefit families across this country today. A century later, under the next speaker, Kevin McCarthy, mark my words, this party will come together to unleash American energy, make the Trump tax cuts permanent, rein in runaway government spending, and fight for a balanced budget. So I stand before you today with unqualified support to nominate my friend, the next Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
Fine speech. Fine speech by the Republican from Arkansas.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Clerk, I rise to nominate Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Clerk, we've heard a lot today, yesterday, the day before, about the potential history that may be made in this chamber. But it is worth repeating, the American people watching, the history that has already been made by the elevation of the dedicated, talented, passionate, and committed public servant and leader from the state of New York, the first African American, the first person of color to lead any political party in the House of Representatives in the history of our country, and that is Hakeem Jeffries. Madam Clerk, it is with great pride that I rise to nominate the gentleman from New York, the man who has been the lead vote getter 10 times and counting to be the Speaker of the House. Madam Clerk, the last several days have been difficult for the country and for the American people as they have watched what has unfolded in this chamber, as they have seen the dysfunction laid bare on the other side of the aisle. And I suspect that some Americans watching will recall the dysfunction of years past. My colleague on the other side of the aisle talked about history, Woodrow Wilson, Calvin Coolidge, and the like. I'd like to take folks through more recent history, because I can tell you that as a member from the great state of Colorado, this is not their first rodeo as far as dysfunction is concerned. 4 years ago today, I was sworn in with my colleagues from the class of 2018 during what became the most difficult and the longest government shutdown in the history of our country. Why? Because of the dysfunction and the chaos on the other side of the aisle. The country then did what it has so often done. It looked to House Democrats to govern and to lead, and under the leadership of one of the greatest speakers in the history of the country, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi, that is exactly what we did. If we want to talk about history, let's talk about recent history. 2 years ago, tomorrow, I stood here with so many of you in this chamber as our democracy was attacked, as our colleagues on the other side of the aisle tried to overturn an election. And the country, yet again, did what it has done before. It looked to House Democrats to lead and to govern. And that is exactly what we did when we certified the election and we safeguarded the transfer of power. So here we find ourselves again in unprecedented times in the early days of the 118th Congress, first time in over 100 years in which the House of Representatives is unable to organize because the House Republican Conference cannot select a speaker. It's a sad day for this institution, but the country will do what it has done before. It will look to House Democrats to govern and to lead, and under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries, that is exactly what we will do. Now, you have heard from so many over the course of the last 3 days about the wisdom, the leadership, and the talents of this extraordinary leader from Brooklyn. But let me tell you why I believe that he is the person for this moment. Centuries ago, our nation's second president, John Adams, laid bare his fear that members of this body would gain influence by, quote, meanness, not greatness, by noise and not sense, by ignorance and not learning. Hakeem Jeffries' leadership is rooted in greatness and not meanness. It is rooted in learning and not ignorance. His approach is rooted in common sense and not the empty and jaded cynicism and noise that we see so often in our political sphere. He is a leader for our times, which is why I believe he is the leader for this time. The bottom line, my colleagues, is this. It is 6:30 p.m. here in Washington, D.C. The House of Representatives, this sacred institution, needs a leader. It needs a speaker. It needs a leader who will inspire us. A leader who knows that our best days are yet ahead. A leader committed to our communities and our Constitution and our country. And I am here to tell you that leader is Hakeem Jeffries of the great state of New York. And so, Madam Clerk, it gives me great honor as the chairman of the House Democratic Communications and Policy Committee to nominate Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker of the House.
Joe Neguse, the Democrat from Colorado.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
To place a name in nomination for the position of Speaker of the House.
The gentleman is recognized.
My friends, when Donald Trump was president, taxes were cut, regulations were slashed, energy was abundant, wages were rising, capital was returning from overseas to fund the dreams and ambitions of our fellow Americans, and the economy was roaring. What a contrast to what we have seen from this administration now. And so I rise to nominate Donald Trump for the position of Speaker of the House. And for all of the vitriol that we hear from the media and at times the left, there were great moments of bipartisanship under the Trump presidency. And the Democrat nominee for Speaker knows that well because he led valiantly on the efforts for criminal justice reform, and I was honored to join him. And I know no matter who's sitting in that speaker chair, we got a lot of work to do on that very issue. We took a first step, but there's a second step and a third step to take, and I'm glad that we were able to work with President Trump, with Republicans, and with Democrats to provide real outcomes for Americans, to create greater prosperity and more opportunity. I also care deeply about President Trump's focus on our nation's veterans. It seemed for far too long on the campaign trail, veterans were disregarded, forgotten about. When we would get elected to office, their issues would not always rise and get center stage, but we were able to pass veterans accountability measures. We were able to actually get people fired at the VA who weren't doing their job. What a great thing that would be to extend and continue to nourish. President Trump oriented our views on trade so that we actually put the American people first, not foreign interests abroad or special interests here at home. President Trump knew that we had to confront China, that China had already engaged in a trade war against us, but it was a war that we were surrendering, and so we started to fight back. He stood with our farmers, and on foreign policy, we stopped trying to find a new Jeffersonian democracy to build out of sand and blood and Arab militias in the Middle East. Matter of fact, President Trump, I believe, is the first president in my lifetime that didn't start any new wars. This is an issue that I know unites some elements of the right and left for the benefit of our communities.
Will the House be in order?
This government for far too long has been deeply corrupt. This town has been deeply corrupt. The way people get leadership positions and chairmanships and opportunities to be able to morally preen has been by accepting lobbyist and special interest money and redistributing that money as currency for favors. And that is not a criticism of either political party. It is a criticism of what we have allowed to happen in this place. And if we just go next man up on our side of the aisle, we will reify that corrupt system and we will abandon the people who are expecting us to fight for them. I have heard from my colleagues about all the important work we have to do, and it is my sincere fear that if we were to allow Mr. McCarthy to assume the speakership, that would not get done, that it would be business as usual, and the very same things that have paralyzed progress for both parties would continue to shackle us to never-ending failure. We can be better than that. We can raise our gaze indeed. We also have to restore to the Speaker's office an actual person that ought to be in the Speaker's office, not the squatter who is currently there. And if the architect of the Capitol is listening, I sent a letter, and I would like to know what the basis is to allow somebody to occupy the Speaker's office who comes in second place 10 straight times. Is there like some basis in law or rule or precedent for that? And so I nominate President Trump because we must make our country great again, and he can start by making the House of Representatives great again.
Matt Gaetz getting one person to applaud following a speech to nominate President Trump for Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Madam Chair, I rise for the purpose of placing a name in nomination.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What a privilege we all are enjoying tonight. We are all enjoying as elected members of this great body. The People's House, as it has been said. And what a great representation of the constitutional republic in which we enjoy living, the greatest country in the history of the world. As we play out as the people's representatives in selecting the all-important position of the Speaker of the People's House. I was out in the southeast balcony here just a few moments ago, looking out at the Supreme Court, looking at the flag flying above this Capitol building, looking at the Jefferson and Madison, both Virginians, by the way, libraries of Congress, and pausing to do what probably most of us recognize we fail too often to do, to take it in, this high privilege, this distinct honor that we have to be the people's representatives from our respective districts in this House, here in this Congress.
Representative Bob Good of Virginia.
This is the greatest nation in the history of the world. With all of our imperfections and all of our imperfections as people and as a nation, no nation in the history of the world has freed more people, has rescued more people, has ministered to more people, has evangelized more people than the United States of America. And that would be a good time to respond with some applause. There's a reason why people from all over the world are trying to get into this country. Many of them illegally due to the policies of the current administration. But people from all over the world are literally taking on a treacherous journey, risking life and limb, subjecting themselves to abuse to try to sneak their way into our country because they know this is the greatest country in the history of the world. No country in the history of the world has provided more upward mobility, more advancement opportunity to people of all races, all nationalities, all ethnicities, like the United States of America. But however, we as a nation, we're teetering on the brink, aren't we? Isn't there just a window of opportunity to save the republic? Crisis after crisis, $32 trillion in national debt. Equates to over $90,000 per citizen, almost $100,000 now per citizen. Some $300,000 per household. When I said that on this very floor a few months ago in a budget debate, the then chairman of the budget committee said, "Stop saying that. We're not asking anybody to pay it back." As if it's not real, as if it's not monopoly. As I heard someone say, don't tell the other side what happens after trillion. What comes after trillion? And we just spent $1.7 trillion, both parties, Republicans joining in the Senate, a few in the House, to pass a $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. Sadly and unfortunately, part of the reason why I stand here today, the kind of bill that has been supported by our former minority leader every time it's come up in the House, no matter who is in control in the 12 years that he has been in leadership, contributing to the $32 trillion in national debt. Yes, the other side is better at raising the debt than we are, but we have been participants. We're in crisis. We're in crisis with 5 million illegals having invaded the border in the last 2 years. When is it too much? We're in crisis with the state of our education system, K-12, college campuses, indoctrination of our kids. We're in crisis with the weakening of our military with these NDAA bills. We're in crisis with trampling on our most basic and essential freedoms over the last 2 years in ways we couldn't have imagined pre-2020. Whether we can assemble, whether we can worship, whether we can earn a living, whether we can travel, what we have to put on our face, whether or not what we have to take into our body, whether or not we have to disclose what we've taken in. Trampled in ways we couldn't have imagined just a few years ago. The greatest reflection of where the people in the country are is the House of Representatives. And the people spoke back on November 8th and gave the majority by some 3 or 4 million votes to the Republican Party. It's not the White House, it's not the Senate, it's the people's house that reflects where the American people are, and they've trusted us on this side of the aisle with the leadership of this House. And we have a window of opportunity to validate that trust, to do whatever we can to save the Republic, to earn them giving us the Senate and the White House and this House back in 2024. We have got to have a leader who not only has true conservative convictions that reflect the majority of Republicans who sent us here, but yet a courageous leader. It doesn't matter what you believe, by the way, unless you're willing to take risks to yourself personally to fight for it. We need a leader who is proven to do that very thing. We have an opportunity to make history. We will live with the decision on this side of the aisle for the next 2 years. We will answer for how we voted. And I know how people in your respective districts, like mine, Madam Chair, all the respective districts, how they're telling you to vote. They've been telling me how to vote for 3 years, to vote for transformational change in our leadership of this Republican Party. They've told me not to vote for the status quo, not to vote for the next in line establishment creature of the swamp cartel, but to vote for transformational change. And they're watching us. They're wondering if we'll hang in there, or will we cave, or will we give in, or will we let them down one more time? And I say we're not going to do that. They're looking to us. Look and see what a great job a recent businessman did in the White House. Did things no one else has ever done in the White House. Did things that no one else has ever done to try to change the country. Showed courage and common sense and judgment that we've not seen before. We need a businessman as the Speaker of the House. We need a businessman like Kevin Hern as Speaker of the House. We need a businessman like Kevin Hern, who has led the Republican Study Committee's budget task force that I've served on for 2 years and put forth the only balanced budget that I've seen, heck, the only budget that I've seen in the 2 years that I've been here, who fought alongside us to say, why don't we adopt the Republican Study Committee's budget for the Republican Party? And we didn't get agreement to do that. We need someone who will do that. And we need someone who's the head of the largest caucus in the Republican conference, someone like Kevin Hern. So it's my privilege to put an official nomination, Kevin Hern, for Speaker of the House. Thank you, and I yield back.
The reading clerk will call the roll.
And with that, what we have is yet another vote, 11 now, and we will see if anything has changed. We will report that to you tomorrow. I want to thank you very much for your participation in this extended version of the Wells Report. Felt kind of good, actually. I sort of enjoyed saying, you know what, I've just done a couple of hours because we got started an hour late, and just be able to do it. There's something to this, isn't there? Yeah. It will be interesting to see. I don't know how many people are going to vote for President Trump, but Jube just said it'll be interesting to see how badly he loses. Well, yeah, but he's not really a serious candidate. Matt Gaetz is making a political speech. Mark Greer, thank you very much for that high compliment. I appreciate it as well. That's very, very nice. I'm just trying to report the news. Yeah. I wish more people would do it. That has been this edition of the Wells Report. I sincerely appreciate your participation in it. We'll see you again tomorrow as we try to sort this out one more time. Have a wonderful evening. All right, my friends, thanks for hanging out a little bit longer. I appreciate it. God bless you and all like you, damn few. Take good care, and I'll see you.